fading it out like the dawn was a DJ. Well, I just want to say welcome everyone. All of I think we got up to dozens of listeners now. This is number 6. We're gonna have a pretty big crew here, but this is a Scary Alvarez podcast. You already knew that, and I'm joined by a couple of absolute media darlings in the Wisconsin Badger sports community. We got Ryan Herrings here from Locked On Badgers, Rajeev from Locked On Badgers, and we have allegedly Justin's going to be joining us a little bit later, but he likes to make an entrance, being the diva that he is. But we appreciate it. We appreciate his beard. It's one of the top 2 beards on this show, so we're going to get it going. But I'm glad to have you both, and for the maybe 3 people who might not know who you are, just kind of quick little introduction to get those folks. Maybe some parents or something don't know yet or something. Or there's a little lacrosse player or who knows. Rajeev?
Yeah, no, Rajeev, you go.
Or Ryan, whatever, man.
My name's Rajeev. I'm very lucky to be on Locked On Badgers with Ryan. He's been very welcoming to his podcast. I went to Wisconsin, 99 to 04. That's how I became a Badger fan. I live in Las Vegas. I'm in property management. And yeah, man, I love talking Badgers. It's really good to be on your show.
Ryan Herrings, Locked On Badgers. I am honored to be here. And by the way, given the guests you've had, Scary, I don't know if we deserve to be. Rajeev probably does, but with basketball players, Wohler, LePay, I don't feel like I deserve to be here.
Yeah, we're definitely in. We are nowhere near that level.
You're really
that's not. Down. Yeah, no, I appreciate it, and let's be brutally honest and take it out about 10,000 more feet. None of those guests deserve to be on necessarily when I'm the one that's hosting it. So I mean, if you want to get technical, we could Scary Alvarez is kind of a a diva in his own way. But no, it's great to have you. Really appreciate it, and for those of you who know the Locked On Badgers community, it's really it's been super impressive and fun to watch from the outside to see how it's been a pretty strong presence for a while, but just the last year when I've been really dialed into it, I've been sort of locked onto it, as some might say. That community has grown to the point where we're doing live episodes when you guys have so many different. I'll say some of them are goofballs, but you got some real fervent fans who are in real time. We never have that in this because this is taped, but checking in and giving you some hot takes, and I just think that's a really cool element of the show. And I know this is just taking off, and I bet in a year from now it's going to be even better, especially after a big time football season and big time basketball season.
Well, no, I appreciate it. And for those who maybe don't know, when I was getting started on Locked On, I reached out to Scary, and I had probably 3 followers at the time, and one of them was Mama Herrings, I think, and I didn't think Scary would come on the show. He did, which meant a lot to me. I think that gave it some credibility, to be honest, if I'm being incredibly truthful. And I'll always be grateful for that. So I think that helped build our show up. And anything we can do to help return the favor, I'm more than glad to. So yeah, I've always been very appreciative of the fact that you were able to come on and willing to come on, because at that point, much like now, I wasn't a nobody. So
Please, your false modesty isn't as obvious as mine, but come on, man. And by the way, I think it's fair to say I doubled your followers from 3 to 6 that fine evening. It was a good time. And Rajeev, one thing I did notice, and you probably remember this, right around the time that the Chris firing in 22, and then with Leonard and stuff, that was just kind of as an outside observer of the Locked On podcast. That is when you kind of went from like the kid who calls in to suddenly you're one of the stalwarts. It was kind of fun to watch that. You're like a walk-on who's Jim. I'm not sure who the best walk-on in Wisconsin history is, but you're the best podcast walk-on in Wisconsin history.
Yeah, Ryan finally gave me my scholarship, which is really good news. It was actually I was calling in on the reaction shows. I think the Illinois game was one of the first ones in, and I just had to talk to someone about that game because it was awful to watch. And yeah, I just decided to keep joining, and Ryan just kept, these guys seem to like me on the show, and it's been really good. I feel like I've been kind of living out a dream, being able to just talk Badger sports, and so I'm so thankful to you and definitely to Ryan for giving me that chance.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to give you that chance. It was my pleasure. Ryan's like, what the fuck?
That scholarship's on a year-to-year, Rajeev. Like I can hold that at any point.
I will say you're and the chemistry on the show is great, and it seems way more natural than like McAfee, which seems like I'm not trying to like hate on McAfee. It's fine, but like I just feel like there's a dynamic where you just find the right fit. And I know Ryan, you do your shows alone; those are good shows too. But I love when you Rajeev and Justin and Ryan. It's you all kind of bring different things to the show, and that's something that my ego is too large to ever fully adopt on my own. I am going to have to just be the sole host of my show always. But if I were a little bit more like a normal mortal, I would probably consider a model like that. So I appreciate the fact that you do that.
Absolutely.
So let's get into look. I know it's not about me; it's about the community. But Don's getting a little bit offended that we're missing our fourth here. We're already on hole 2 now, and the guys in the clubhouse finishing off. It's not a sherry, I can tell you that, but he's finishing off in O'Doul's or something. I'm not sure what he's doing. We'll get him on. We'll get him on.
I feel like he might have fallen asleep. Who knows? This guy.
After getting
yeah, as opposed to the two of you who are going to do it on the actual podcast. But for those of you who don't know, this is a late night taping. I believe we are now into Friday Eastern time for Ryan. So I appreciate that. You got to get up and do the fields tomorrow morning. What's on your agenda?
Oh man, probably another podcast. Probably like another Locked On podcast.
The Locked On Badgers Scary Alvarez Hangover podcast.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Do a live one.
Maybe I can just steal this and turn this into a Locked On show as well. I'll record this on the side.
Just whatever, man. You can tell by my cool graphics I've spent a lot of time on. It'd be really hard to fashion that into your own. Well, let's talk about football and basketball. We'll get into some other sports, but and I know you guys have covered aspects of this on your shows, but you haven't covered them on mine yet. And I'd like to know. Let's start with football first. Just give me a breakout player or two who's not someone who's necessarily, like Hunter Waller, for example. Yes, I have him on my podcast. That's not why I'm doing this, but he's been all over the place in camp. He's showing people what they knew that they're going to see from him, but maybe someone a little more under the radar than that y'all are expecting a big 23 from.
Yeah. See, our chemistry's off now. That
no, that's okay. It's okay. There's an advantage. There's an advantage in going second first because then the other guy can't take your guy. That's the good thing. So, Rajeev, go ahead, man. Take it out. Take it out.
All right. Under the radar. Well, so, oh boy, I think one of my guys that's under the radar, I think right now is TJ Bollers. I think that, he's not one of the top defensive guys that everyone's kind of talking about. And I feel like the weight that he put on in the offseason, he's going to have a really, really big year playing that edge, that defensive end / linebacker role. I think that, we need that, right? In this defense that we're about to run in the 3-3-5, the linebackers are going to play they're going to play different roles. And I feel like he's got the ability to kind of do that. I think he's really going to blow up on the offensive side. Look, you got to just point to the receivers. And the question is, which one of them is really going to blow up? But based on everything we're seeing, Bryson Green, but I'll say that's a little bit it's not really under the radar. So my sort of under the radar guy, I think, who are any really under the radar? I love Skylar Bell. I still think he's going to have a bigger year than people think, even though he's backing up Will Pauling in the slot. I think his raw talent and ability, it's going to be able to make itself. He's going to be in 4 wide, 5 wide sets. I think that he's still going to get a lot of good playing time and going to have a great year.
That's great.
I'll go receiver as well. I think a guy who's under the radar is Keontae Lewis, and it's because of how he might be able to be used in this offense. He's one of the true vertical threats I think this team has, and it's going to have a lot more room to operate. He's not going to be a guy that puts up a ton of numbers, but he could be a guy that has 3-4 game-breaking plays throughout the course of the year that fans will always, 15 years from now, point to that 70-yard Keontae Lewis touchdown under the lights in Camp Randall. I think he could be that type of guy that has a couple special plays this year that help turn games. Defensively, I like the Bowlers pick a lot. I think Jason Maitre is another one. I don't know if he's really under the radar, though. So Bowlers is a great pick there because they need pass rushing, right? And he's a 270-pound edge guy, and those guys just don't grow on trees. That type of size is pretty unusual. So I'm going to go Bowlers, agree with Rajeev there. And I'm going Keontae Lewis. And maybe a Tucker Ashcraft is an interesting one at tight end as well. A guy that, came in and really physically ready to play. And now it's a tight end room that the depth is kind of decimated. So I think that's a guy you could point to as well.
Yeah, and that's been a development, obviously, in the last week to 2 weeks. And don't get me wrong, they have some real nice players in there. Hayden Rushi, my Wisconsin Badger football grandson, and some Seagraves, and some of these guys who are who have a lot of potential and have already showed that they can play the game. But depth at that position, especially given past years, the injuries and stuff, losing three potential contributors, uh, you know, or having them not be on the team or whatever the situation ends up being. No one really knows exactly. There's not a lot of information coming out, so don't assume anything about what is going on with those players, other than they're not out on the field right now. That's been a little bit of a disturbing thing, and I have a lot of confidence in the coaches and that the guys in the room, but that's certainly a position where the depth is being challenged early.
I think it's kind of an interesting way. It's kind of a cool storyline about who's really going to emerge out of that mix, right? Of Riley and Pugh and these guys, and of course Ashcraft. At every other position, I think we're pretty much set on who the starters are going to be. Nothing's really going to surprise us. There's some offensive line shifting here and there, but for the most part, I feel like we feel comfortable where we are with the lineup. But tight end is that X factor. We don't know how involved they're really going to be in this offense with the way Longo tailors it to what our players have, and who's really going to emerge out of that group. So I think it's a cool storyline going into the year too.
That's great. And again, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ron.
No, I was just gonna say with Nowakowski at 6'1", it just, as much as you love the walk-on type story, and he's been an all-around guy, Longo's talked highly about him, it's really hard for me to imagine a couple 6'5" guys that are behind him that are athletic don't eventually overtake that. It's just hard to be a 6'1" tight end, right? There's a reason those guys don't exist. Linebackers can blanket them. So it's a really, like Rajeev was saying, it's a really interesting position with Nowakowski kind of seemingly in the front, but with a frame that doesn't usually lend to success at tight end.
It's tricky. It's like being it's like being a 5'9" linebacker for Nebraska. It wasn't not always easy. I was of course not talking about myself. I was 6'3", but and it's hard to say under the radar because in this case, but Braylon Allen, if and you guys did a show about this recently, if anyone who is could I think fairly be labeled a superstar or a superstar in the making, or certainly an all Big Ten caliber player, can be I won't say an afterthought, but given so much emphasis on the offense being a much more pass happy offense and how great the receiver room is, and I've been beating those drums too. I think that game by game, especially as the winds change to October and November, I think that he stays healthy and that line gels a little bit. I think that we're going to have an incredible Braylon Allen season, which is not surprising to me. It shouldn't be surprising given his talent level, how strong he is, his commitment to the offense, playbook, things like that. But this whole thing about, and I know it's being portrayed by the national media more than the Badger media, but this whole thing about air raid is going to look exactly like whatever Longo thinks can get us the most yards. In some games, that's going to be 250 rushing yards. And they think I'm crazy. It's going to be. There are going to be games when Mordecai is going to have 150 yards passing, which is going to look a lot in some ways like what Badgers have done. And there are going to be games when he has 350. I think that's going to happen too. But that's what's so exciting about this offense is that it's air raid, but it's going to be what they give you. And I think that's going to be a really interesting eye opener for a lot of people this year.
Very good point. I totally agree with you. I think that a lot of people hear the words air raid and they instantly think that, there's one system and it's all these X number of plays. But Longo's system is so different. He's very, very public about the fact that he tailors it. So totally right. I mean, and I think Braylon Allen's season it's one of the more underrated things. I mean, yeah, we're talking about it, but you're right. A lot of people in the national media are focusing on the receivers. And I mean, this guy's never run into 6-man boxes. He's run into more 8 or 9-man boxes than anyone else in the country. And he still is productive. What will this man do against 6 guys when we're running 4 wide and 5 wide? It's just going to be incredible to see what he does. And now we're also seeing and we're hearing about practice where he's having sets with Malusi on the field too. So they're going to be both out there at times. Think about the different plays that he's going to be involved in. Ultimately, we know that when you get the ball in playmakers' hands, great things happen. And so, yeah, that ball's going to the guy behind the quarterback a lot more than people think this year.
And jumping on that, it's so crazy that, and Fickell addressed this past week of practice of fall camp. It's that Braylon's having trouble getting meaningful reps in practice. He only means that because the way that play is set up, it's not going to look exactly like he's going to be seeing in the regular season, and the contact isn't there. Yeah. And so he's kind of like a kid in a candy shop waiting to eat the candy, as a coach, because you can see it. You can see the projection of what this kid is going to be able to do, but you're not seeing it necessarily in fall camp like you are with some of the other things, like some of the passing game things we're seeing when you have the one-on-one drills and stuff. You're not getting that same look for the running back stuff for various reasons. And reading between the lines of what Fickell was saying this week, I think he is like, and it's not, Malusi's great too, and I think even behind them they have some guys who can run, but he is so excited to see what Allen can do in this offense. It's almost it's palpable. I think it's going to be really incredible.
And so are we. And here's the other element I don't think people talk about enough, and I should probably I'll lump myself in that because I don't think I do. Mordecai's athletic as well. There's a quarterback mobility aspect of this offense that we haven't had at Wisconsin in a while. Mordecai's a 4.7-ish guy, right? So now you could add that element of opening up a defense, creating more space, and creating some RPO action with Mordecai. And he can take off and get 8, 12 yards. He can scramble on 3rd and 7 for 8. It's going to be backbreaking for defenses to try to cover all these receivers, worry about Braylon Allen, and then watch Tanner Mordecai slip out on a 3rd and 6 for 7 yards. This offense has the potential to be so good. And I don't think we're overhyping it, quite frankly. I think we're right on the mark with how excited we are with what this offense could be.
In 2023, can you believe this new Wisconsin offense is going to be what Braylon Allen is only 17 was a couple of years ago, and Jake Ferguson is Barry Alvarez's grandson from the year before that? It's going to be the new catchphrase of like, this isn't Wisconsin's off. It's just going to be wild to watch.
By the way, how many times are we going to hear that phrase this year from announcers? Well, this isn't the Wisconsin of old.
Well, that's exactly it. It's going to be their new go-to. They're going to lead shows with it. Game Day is going to talk about it. Of course, the helmet. I'm not sure if he's going to put a Badger helmet on or like a I don't know, like a passing arm helmet. It's going to be something totally different, but it's going to be great. Let's really quick switch this over to basketball. Same question. A breakout basketball player that may not be the number one. It's not the St. John's transfer. It's someone you to keep an eye on. Maybe not someone who's going to get 14 points a game this year, but someone who's going to be a huge contributor that maybe wasn't before. Ryan, why don't you start?
Yeah, listen, if we're talking kind of under the radar breakout that wasn't before, AJ Storr is too easy, right? He's obviously going to be a huge part. And then most of the other pieces are back. So you're either talking about internal development where a guy like Connor Essegian, who isn't a secret to anybody, could break out in a sense next year, become a much better player with a year of physical conditioning, strength, and with better weapons around him. So that may not fit the criteria exactly of what you're asking, but that's where I'm going to go because I think we're going to see a much better, cleaner, more rounded version of Connor. He's not going to wear down at the end of the year. I think defensively, listen, he was targeted last year. Teams went after him. I think that's going to kind of go away. I think his efficiency is going to stay consistent. He's going to get easier looks. So I'm going to go with Connor. Again, it's hard to call him a breakout, but I think he's going to take a big step up. And I don't know if people are talking about that potential enough.
Well, they're going to be after the show, buddy. They're going to be after the show.
Let's start that up.
Yeah, no, that's good. I feel like there's a couple different options here. I'm going to go Max Klesmit because I know that, things are going to change with the starting lineup with Storr coming in, but I think Max brings such like a Brad Davison vibe of really tough defender, just like a tough guy, that kind of glue guy that can do a lot of things. And I think we're going to have other stars on this team. But I don't think he got enough credit for what he did last year anyway. And I think another year of that is he's going to just be that solid guy that this team needs and is going to need in tough spots. The other guy I'm going to say is one of the freshmen, Gus Yalden, who I think we all are very excited about. Gus Bus in the house. So yeah, I mean, this guy is going to bring size down low and a little bit more meat and a little more post move ability that I think we really are going to rely on. My favorite guy in next year's class is Nolan Winter. I mean, I love them both, but Nolan Winter, I think, has a humongous ceiling. Gus definitely has a higher floor. I think ceiling for Winter is so incredible. So I'm just going to kind of say, look, the freshman group as a whole can make a big difference. And I'm really excited to see what kind of impact they're actually going to have and who's going to play and whether anyone will possibly redshirt. But as far as people on the team right now, I love Max Klesmit. I don't think he gets enough credit, and he's going to be a big factor for us.
Yeah, and we talked about this before we went on, and we were in the green room. I did a podcast that just dropped today that had the entire scholarship freshman class on, and it was it's a lot of fun. I mean, these guys are playing beyond their years, and in some sense are wise beyond their years, but in other sense, these are 19-year-old kids. It was really kind of fun to like have that moment with them where they're just kind of being themselves. I think it's something Gus mentioned to me is that it was fun to do it because it didn't feel like the traditional interview, probably a little bit like lockdown would have felt. You know, I mean, it's a little bit more laid back and a little, not as like it's like WKOW or something. Not nothing against them, but just it's not quite as rehearsed, and they just kind of got to be themselves. And I mirror that. I think we're gonna get some nice contributions from the freshmen this year, however that looks. Um, it this again, kind of like Braylon Allen, may sound like a weird, you know, diamond in the rough player this year, but I think Chucky Hepburn is going to be back to being Chucky Hepburn, the point guard. He can shoot, he can score. He's going to do both just fine as he always has. But he's going to be distributing and do those things. A lot of things we saw him do freshman year when Johnny Davis was on the team and stuff. And I think it's going to be a lot more natural fit instead of having to put the team on his back every time that clock clicked under 1 minute and it was like 57-57. You know how many times that happened last year? You kind of knew, in most cases, he was going to have to put the load, and if he could come through, they're going to win. If he couldn't, it was going to be overtime. And that's a terrible burden for a point guard. So,
especially a point guard like him, right? Like he's not a Devin Harris type of point guard,
right? Yeah, he's an unusually good shooting from three kind of point guard, and he can create, but he's at his best when he's facilitating, and then also he doesn't mean he can't do offense. He's a legitimate scorer. He's a legitimate Big Ten scorer, but not having to be the guy that is going to have to get those points if they're going to squeak out those games every single time is going to be, I think, going to be very liberating for him. I look forward to it. I'm not afraid to say this, an all Big Ten first or second team caliber season. That is, and I've talked up, and I think it was on your podcast recently. I have great expectations. If this team stays healthy, and these kids are half of what we think they are, I really think the Badgers are going to have a good season. And I said before, I'm going to stick by this 2 weeks later. I will be stunned if they're not a top 5 Big Ten team this year. I would be shocked. And this is a legitimate Sweet 16 threat. I think they are. They're a Sweet 16 threat. And Big Steve Prowl, I think, is going to have a nice year too. That's another guy I was going to mention. I think from what I'm hearing already, he's gonna step it up this year.
Totally agree. And obviously we've talked many times on our show about late game situations and the inability to score when, late in the game, late shot clock things, and certainly scoring droughts that this team has had. That big hole kind of got filled when you had a guy like AJ Storr that can automatically bring more points onto the floor, take that pressure off Hepburn, like you said. That's a really good point. And even a CJ this year had to do a lot, and that's why he got tired late in the season. And so now those points can be distributed a little bit better. And we've got a full lineup of returning guys that are going to bring so much. And yeah, we weren't. Listen, how many close games were we in last year, right? Yeah, there were close wins, close losses, but we weren't that far from being, a much better team. And look at what we've added and look at how much better this team should be on paper. And there's no reason to think that Greg Garth's not going to get it done. Very, very happy for what we're seeing with him and recruiting as well. Just a good win.
Yeah, and I know we're all sort of like we're tiptoeing around a little bit, but like, wow, the 24 class, although it's going to be a solid class, no matter what happens the rest of the way. If they end up with 2 guys or 3, it's going to be okay. But the elephant in the room is Con gonna join the Badgers? It goes from an above average Badger recruiting class, which I think it would be, with some really, really solid players with nice upside, to a possibly all-time great Sam Decker-like class. And I know that's part of the appeal they're probably making to Con himself to join, is that, I don't know much about the kid. I'm not here trying to recruit him. It's fine. The staff's doing what they have to do. They're being honest with him. He's going to make the choice that's right for him, and I'll support whatever that decision is. But talking about that, you have a chance to be a legend, and to get on a team with, you now have the 22 class was obviously very small, but a really special player in that class, and the 23 class with some real potential difference makers with personality, as the Alden showed. And then this could be a Wisconsin Badger renaissance. We go from fire Gard to give the guy a parade just like that. So not putting the pressure on that one commit. I'm just saying it's indicative of how close we are, I think, to really turn the corner and getting back to the things we wanted in the mid 2010s.
Well, I think, and that's a great point with the Badger renaissance potentially, because we've talked about that. If even without Con, this team is loaded up on shooting, on skill. Daniel Freitag is an incredible get. I love Nolan Winter as well. Gus Yalden is going to be a pain in the ass for Big Ten defenders for 4 years. Like, this team could be really good. I think John Blackwell's underrated. AJ Storr. I do want to ask you guys about AJ Storr. I had interesting recent comment from somebody who follows the show on Twitter. He posed the question: could AJ Storr just be here for 1 year? Is he an NBA guy after this year potentially? I thought that was interesting because I've been kind of thinking about him long term, right? Because he has 3 years of eligibility left, but he's a 6'6" wing with bounce. If he shoots the ball well, like that could be it.
If Storr is an NBA draft pick in 2024, that means something went really, really well for him this season. And I accept that. I'd be happy for the kid. I don't, these guys are trying to make a career for themselves, the ones who want to go on to play basketball, and that would be a really, really, really good sign. So I'd almost take that right now. If that kid's a draft pick in the 2024 draft, that means he was a huge contributor for what was likely a really, really, really solid, or if not great, Wisconsin team. So, but it doesn't jump off the page at me as like he's one of the NBA's top 30 for 2024. I've not heard anything about that, but let's see what happens. I mean, this is going to be very possibly a starting year for him on a really good team, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, totally same. I mean, I completely agree. I feel like I don't necessarily think he's a 1 year guy. I mean, maybe I just haven't watched enough of him to really know if that's what kind of ability he has and ceiling he has. But yeah, if that's the guy we're gonna get, more power to it, buddy. That's fine. Let's see how deep we can go in the tournament.
Listen, everybody would take a two and through. Everybody would take a Johnny Davis who's in college for 2 years and then leaves for the pros. Really quickly, the other thing with Storr, and then I could talk about Storr for a long time too because I'm super excited about him. He's on the Bahamas team, right? He's playing played a couple exhibition games against Kansas that were on Twitter. People focus on the highlight dunks, which are easy to do. But his first game, he was 9 of 10 from the free throw line. I thought that was the most important part of that because that's an aspect of our offense that we just haven't been able to. We haven't been able to get to the line consistently for a couple of years since Johnny. And even when Johnny was there, it was just him, right? So having a guy that can put pressure on the rim, what that does is it sucks everybody in. And now we also have a team full of shooters. That speaks to Scary's point about opening up Hepburn for more shots, Siegen for more shots. Storr could be the linchpin to unlock this entire thing with his ability to put pressure on the rim.
I didn't see this. Storr, the Bahamas team played Kansas.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How'd that game go?
So he averaged 15 and 6. So his first game was better, but he looked good. He belonged on the court with Kansas, and his Bahamas team had Buddy Hield on it, another NBA player who I'm forgetting. But so he's playing with real talent, which I think is going to be good for him against Kansas, and he belonged. So I was very impressed, and it just kind of reinforced the idea if he is a 6'6" guy with bounce who can get to the rim, as long as he shoots it okay, that's all the boxes the NBA is looking for at this point.
Let's do it. That's amazing. Well, let's move on to another topic. This is gonna be a quick one. That's what she said. But should Wisconsin bring baseball back? This is something I get, and for some reason, my name is always in the mouth of people who are talking about baseball. Like I'm Scary Alvarez, the Wisconsin baseball killer. Well, that wasn't me. We've already established that. And the whole thing about having to cut a women's sport to bring in or add another one, it's just very tricky. What do you guys think about the future of Wisconsin baseball? Because there are a lot of people who believe it or not. I mean, Wisconsin's a baseball state in some ways too, and people want it. What do you guys think?
When I first started out my freshman year in Madison, and I realized, and while I was there, I realized we didn't have a team. I was like, wait, what? I didn't even realize. I don't follow, Big Ten college baseball, but I absolutely think we should have a team. I think it's bananas that we don't. And I think it's not only just for the baseball, but it's also just for the athletic department. I mean, you certainly know you've ran that athletic department. I feel like we need to add that back because it's just more makes the university and the sports, the athletic department more holistic. And there's really no reason not to add the right sports that you need to, make it fair for everyone and bring it back because clearly fans want it. Clearly students want it. I can't think of a lot of people anyone who doesn't want it. So yeah, and I think it will happen. I feel like we've heard a lot more about it in recent times. I think the McIntosh is making changes. So I feel like it's going to happen.
For the longest time, so I'm a big baseball fan. I love baseball. For the longest time, I would have said yes, absolutely. And recently I've been thinking about it more and I'm just kind of like, but really, are people really clamoring for it? Or are they clamoring for it because they don't have it? Right. Like there's a difference, like when it's here, are people really going to be that into it? Or I'm not so sure. I don't know if Would I like to have it? Yes. Am I as passionate or as hopeful or as optimistic or as earnest about it as I used to be? Not really. Even though I would cheer for it. I would talk about it on Locked On Badgers, but it's so far to me behind football and basketball that if someone told me, I don't know how many millions it would cost. I have no idea. But let's say I'm going to throw a number out there. Let's say someone says it's going to cost 40 million, whatever that number is, to get the facilities, the coaches, to get it going. And if somebody told me, well, we could take that 40 million and put it into an NIL fund for football, what would I say? I would say go buy quarterbacks is what I would say. So
Well, Ryan, congratulations! You just turned into Ryan Herring's Wisconsin baseball villain.
I know.
So, join me.
That's not the intention, but I don't know if people really want it or if they just want it because they don't have it.
Yeah,
I think that's a fair point.
Yeah, that's probably part of it. Yeah, it's probably not going to happen. So, let's get into, put you in the sort of advice columnist thing, and let's pretend Greg Gard and Luke Fickell. And I promise I'm going to have. And by the way, as an aside here, I'm going to have shows coming up in the next couple weeks that are going to branch out into other Badger sports: Wisconsin wrestling, Wisconsin volleyball. So this isn't going to be exclusively a football basketball show. It's going to be heavily those, but I think it's a part of this. The mission of this podcast is to give some exposure to other programs. Oh, by the way, before we go on, we would have to add a women's program to add baseball back. What are we thinking? I'm thinking beach volleyball. We can use the same players, right? I mean, isn't that like we already have the incredibly? This isn't anything weird. I'm just saying, like, we have the incredibly talented, dominant volleyball program. Wouldn't those skills translate? And we could kick UCLA and USC, like, just right before they get in the Big Ten. We'd already be the best beach volleyball team in the Big Ten.
Is that a
listen? I fully support that. It's actually interesting how so I play beach volleyball just recreationally, and it's very different than
look at you, Iceman.
Hey, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense that why not? There's nothing wrong with that.
Is that a Big Ten sport? Like, do other Big Ten teams around us have beach volleyball, or is it just the West schools?
No, I think so. It can be like Texas with men's swimming. We would be like the Big Ten champion every year because it'd be like us, but it would be like us, USC, Oregon, Washington. Like, it would be the West Coast and Wisconsin, basically. Let me tell you something. Iowa's not going to have a beach volleyball team. Let's be brutally honest with you. That ain't gonna happen. But anyway, I can ask that when I get some of the volleyball people on the show. We'll reach that out and see what they think about that. But I was going somewhere with this before I brought that out. Oh yeah, advice. So you have Luke Fickell on the phone right now. He's very he loves to just speak to podcasters and just see what they think. Rajeev, what is one piece of advice you would give him before the season starts? He's going to be listening.
Keep doing what you are doing, because this man is impressing the heck out of me with everything that he's done for the program. And I would say, going into the season, one piece of advice, which I don't think he needs, is remember what this program was really built on from Barry. And I think that the running game is super important, and I don't want to see anything disappear with that. I understand the offense is changing, and I fully welcome it. I fully welcome the unpredictability and the air raid, but running is still a real important part of what we do, because it's won us a lot of games, and it's how it goes. So I would want to make sure that's there. Again, I don't think he needs that, but that's what I would tell him. What I would really say is, you're doing great, coach. Just keep being you, because I think this guy has completely changed the entire culture of the University of Wisconsin football program. And it's exactly what we've needed. It's what Badger fans have frankly been clamoring for years, is to be able to take that next step. And I think that next step is upon us, and he's the guy to do it. The program was built up in such an amazing way, and we were on the precipice of greatness, and this is the guy that can get us there. So keep being you, Luke.
Including listening to this podcast, Coach Fickell. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I know you and your guys and Longo and the boys are all huddled around this every time I drop it, so that's appreciated. Ryan, what do you got?
Man, it is hard to follow Rajeev sometimes. It's like the guy following Lincoln in the Gettysburg Address. Like, who's that guy? Nobody knows.
I thought you were going to talk about Lincoln in the watching the play. Okay, better.
I would say two things. The first is, I would say, find a scientist, go back, build a time machine, go back 4 months and offer Garrett Sexton. Let's start there. Don't let that dude leave the state. Because I was pretty vocal about that. I still am. They should have got him. That was one they had in the bag if they had offered. But there's really nothing else. I think he's, to Rajeev's point, and this, I hate to just echo what he's saying, but he's really nailed it from a marketing standpoint. The hires have been really strong. I think he's built a culture. I would say, and this is probably nitpicky, and I don't have all the details, so I want to tread carefully. I would say just be incredibly careful, and I'm sure he is. Again, this is much like Rajeev said. I'm sure he doesn't need this advice from Joe Schmo podcaster, right? But be very careful with team culture, chemistry. There are like the Jordan Turner thing, Kamoi Latueta thing. I just don't want this to become and I don't think it will. I want to be super clear, but I don't want it to become a team that overlooks issues for talent. And that's all I'd say there. I don't think it is. I'm sure he's handling culture the right way. But there have been a couple interesting instances, and I would just maybe monitor that going forward. But he doesn't need my advice. That man's been to the playoffs. I haven't even done that in EA Sports. So the guy.
I feel just so you guys both know, I want cards on the table. I'm naturally uncomfortable around modesty. So you guys being very self-effacing and very, that just ain't me. Luke Fick, if I give you advice, take it, okay? And I just do. I basically just send it on my BlackBerry to him every day, so he doesn't need it right now. And to Greg Gard, same thing.
So let me go first here before Rajeev takes anything that I'm going to say. This one's a little easier to me only because, listen, we've seen Gard in Madison longer. Like in 2 years, if you ask this question to us regarding Luke Fickell, I bet you our answers would be more robust, right? Luke Fickell's won the offseason. He hasn't coached in the season yet. The biggest issue I've had with Gard is I think he needs to trust his bench more. I've said that for a couple of years. I think there's people, if you're going to go out and use a transfer spot on a young player like a Kamari McGee, I almost feel like you have to play him more at least in the non-conference. Let him get into a rhythm. Let him get some regular minutes because he does bring some athletic things. Or an Ilver, a guy who can shoot but needs to rein it in. I feel like he gets too tight in the games that don't mean anything. I shouldn't say don't mean anything. In the games that Wisconsin is comfortably the better team. And then when it tightens up and if you have an injury or you need to rely on one of those guys, you haven't given them the opportunity to build experience, to get better, to get chemistry, to get rhythm. So I would say lean into your bench a little bit more. I've been a big supporter of Greg Gard. I think he's a very good coach. I do think that's an area he could get better.
Yeah, that's a good one. And the other thing I would say is late game situations, late shot clock situations. Man, sometimes and listen, I understand that it's based on talent and who's out there. And I know that there were times where, Chucky, that the only thing they can do is turn to Chucky in that situation. And you want to be able to turn to a guy like that to do it. But we need more inventiveness and to not be so predictable. I mean, how many times did we see Chucky take a fadeaway three or a fadeaway shot late in shot clock? That's just late in the game. I mean, there has to be something better, and we've got to take that time to do that. So other than that, look, I think Greg Gard is a good coach. I've said it many times. I wanted nothing to do with him being gone. I was totally not on that train. I think he's done a good job. I think he's the guy to take us, continue down the road that we're going on, get back to every year tournaments. I expect that. And I think we'll get that. And recruiting is improving. We've seen that. We're very excited about the class. So, yeah, I mean, late game situations, though, it's something that really bugs me.
Yeah, those are fair points, both you and Rajeev. I mean, as far as late game situations, though, and it's kind of a cliche, but situations will take care of themselves when there's more talent and talent and experience. So I think that any team, I mentioned this a little bit talking about Chucky earlier, given his role, which I expected to be different this year, it's going to be kind of like it was with Johnny Davis, maybe even to a greater extent this year. There are going to be multiple options you can go to at the end of a shot clock. I really think there's going to be. If Crowell takes that little bit of a step and you got, the transfer comes in and does his thing and everyone can do their roles and you got Essegian doing his stuff, you're going to have ways you can go that doesn't make it Chucky Hepburn step back. And again, he made several of those, which is a testament to his ability, but it was unfair to put him in that position. And again, last year, I think we averaged 66 points a game. You are not going to see the 2023-24 Badgers are going to probably average around 70 or north of 70. So as I said last year, those games that were one possession games at the end, we're going to have 5-point leads. It's just going to be a different kind of vibe. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Just eliminate the 9-minute scoring droughts. That would be real great. That's one thing we've got to get rid of.
That now look, even it didn't happen in 13, 14, 15, but even with some of our really good teams since then, our Sweet 16 caliber teams with Hayes and Koenig and some, it seems like a Wisconsin thing. Of course, much rarer in those situations, but we're just with that offense for some reason. If your guys aren't hitting the shots, you're going to have some droughts. But I don't think we're going to have like. And really, I said this after the North Texas game was the perfect microcosm of the things that didn't go right with the season last year. Just having that a team, frankly, an inferior team to Wisconsin in talent and coaching and any other number of things, just because we couldn't make 2 baskets in 9 minutes. That's not going to happen this year. I don't think it's going to happen. So, of course, our ceiling's not going to be the NIT semifinals. It's going to be, hopefully Sweet 16 or beyond. But I'm excited for this year. I'm really excited. And last question I'm going to ask. I'm going to let you guys off. I know it's getting late. It's almost 1 a.m. Right?
We're in a rhythm now. Let's go.
Okay. So I might sign off because I got to go to my hyperbaric chamber. But I watched 1993 highlights there till dawn. I don't actually sleep. I don't need sleep. I haven't slept ever. Sleep, and I don't have tear ducts either. So it's pretty much the same deal.
Awesome.
What is a Wisconsin non-revenue sport? And it doesn't have to be a non-revenue sport because volleyball is a revenue sport, but a non-football, non-men's basketball sport that you are super excited about, either because you personally like to watch it or because you see the future of this program becoming something really special. I know volleyball is an easy one I've talked about, but let's think a little deeper than women's volleyball because that is we know they're a dynasty. And women's hockey too. I'll make it hard on you. Let's take women's hockey and women's volleyball off the table, and where do you guys go from there?
Well, you didn't take men's hockey off the table. So
I did not.
I will say men's hockey. And so when I went to Madison and lived in Ogg Hall, but by the way, I know you brought Ogg Hall on your last
one
show.
of the good ones.
But it was before the new Ogg Hall. It was when it was 2 twin towers back in the old days. But anyway, right across from the Skoll Center. And Badger hockey games. Listen, I now follow the NHL. I follow and kind of loosely follow Badger hockey, but I don't follow it as much as I should. But I know the things that have changed. I know that McIntosh is making changes, not just football, basketball, and even hockey throughout the entire athletic department. And so, first of all, it makes me excited about everything because of what he's doing and how he's just taking it. Not that he's making things that much better, but he's just taking the program to the next step. But with hockey, I mean, you're talking about a sport that is so well followed and attended in Madison and obviously in Wisconsin and the northern states. It's a big deal. And that program belongs on top, and it doesn't belong where it's been most recently. And it's a team that needs to see Frozen Four appearances and win national titles. And so I think that we're ready to take that next step now and get out of sort of that bit of a valley that we've been in.
Agreed. And we talked about this on one show previously. Hastings is a home run hire, and as underwhelming as Granado's career was, and I'm still shocked by it because I love Tony. He's such a good hockey mind. Wisconsin had the number 3 recruiting class in hockey last year, with one of the worst teams in hockey. This team recruits itself, and the transfer portal with Hastings was good to the Badgers again. I'll go and say it. I think the Badger men's hockey team will be a Big Ten contender in the first season of Hastings' career this year. Wow. They may not win it. Michigan's hard to beat. They recruit so well, but I think Wisconsin's going to be on the up, and I think they're going to be a threat to make the tournament, if not go advance in the tournament. Ryan, what do you got for a less than maybe like not marquee program, but something that's on the up or something you personally enjoy a lot?
Yeah, for sure. I really quickly though want to ask you because you would know this better than I would. What happened? Why do you think it didn't work with Granado?
I've said this before, and I hate to sound like I don't know every answer to every question because I do usually. This one, I am still perplexed. I do not know. The recruiting was always there. The culture, by many accounts, was there. So he had the talent, and he had all that stuff. The fans are kind of are tricky because that's a lot is a measure of how the team is doing. So 2 years, the COVID season when they were a national title threat team, those crowds would have been there, but they weren't able to be there because of COVID. But it just didn't click. I don't know if maybe he just didn't connect with the college kids in the way that he did with the pro guys. I don't know, but he done some amateur coaching before too, so I don't know. But maybe that was a lesson that was learned at higher levels within the hockey community, and they made they went a different direction with Hastings. Who was just he's apparently by all accounts a fantastic coach who really does it the right way, as they say. And but I'm going to kind of double down on this one. I would be probably equally stunned if Hastings doesn't do really well, as I would have been with Coronado. But it's going to end up being a holy mystery, Ryan. I don't think anyone can fully explain it. I think you could find individual elements of individual teams that weren't working, and you could say, well, that's because of this, or because the assistant. One thing I did, the assistant coaching maybe wasn't up to stuff after his brother left the program as an assistant. I don't want to pick on anyone personally, but that is kind of the buzz that I would hear, is that some of the assistant coaching maybe wasn't what it could have been. But boy, it's hard to know for sure. But that was a terrible situation. I just wish Tony the best in the future.
Interesting. Underrated sport that I'm really excited about. I've been stoked for the women's lightweight rowing team. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention. Emily Brewitt out of Madison. She's kind of the star of the team. Put 15 pounds of good weight on upper body muscle this year. So I think she's going to come out and just absolutely destroy it. They also are switching. We've been running with an older type of sled, older type of boat made out of this Missouri company. They've streamlined that. They're going with a new boat out of the West Coast, which is supposed to be a little quicker, a little faster through the water. So that team right there, I think they're about to build a little bit of a dynasty. Again, Emily Burritt coming out of Madison is kind of the linchpin of that team. I made all that up. I have no idea. I'm actually really excited about women's basketball, because here's the thing.
That's amazing. That is amazing, because I knew that wasn't true, but you're having so much fun, and there was I just let it go.
No, yeah. So
I was trying to stop myself from laughing. I was like, "What is he doing?"
That is amazing. That is amazing. That's the best. Yeah, that's the best acting job that has happened since Ted Valentine pretended to be objective in a basketball game where Indiana was playing.
Listen, I do what I can at 12:52 a.m. on the East Coast. I will say, though, women's basketball, I was able to have Chrissy Birdsall on the show, and now I'm not making anything up, by the way. She was able to talk. She's covered the team. Maria Mosley. She thinks that she's building something there. Saria Williams is kind of a young star there. It's hard. The women's basketball team has been so bad forever. I didn't realize how bad it was till I really dug into it. But it's hard to build a foundation, right? You need somebody to come in there and take their lumps for a couple years to build it. So Mosley's coming into a big year where they actually got a little better down the stretch last season. They put together some nice performances. If she's able to build on that, I love basketball. I talk about it all the time on the show. I've coached women's basketball. I would love to have a good women's basketball team in Wisconsin. I would be thrilled to watch that. So that's what I'm interested in. I'm hoping it happens. I'm not sure if it will, but they did start to get a little momentum at the end of last year.
Yeah, I noticed that, and it has a little bit of player attrition that was unfortunate. As some of the better players, and you never know what that's about. There was nothing obvious about what happened there, but didn't like to see that. What is last thing I'm going to ask, because even I'm getting tired. I don't sleep again, but I have the Sherry's calling me. It's Sherry time, and some fried cheese, of course. What is a sport that Wisconsin doesn't have right now that you'd like them to have besides baseball? Like, is there like and women's beach volleyball? Is there a sport like, and what's the sport you made up? What's the name of it?
The sport I made up, lightweight rowing. That's not a made up sport. They have that.
That's real.
Yeah, no, that one's real.
I'm going to hear it from the lightweight rowing team now. Yeah. Way to go! I guess I'm going to have them all on.
Like, I only made up like 80% of that story. That sport's legit. It's there.
Oh, okay. Jeez, that was kind of mean, Ryan. Okay.
I tell you, you were looking over. You're getting some information. One sport that I'm an Indian person, by the way, if you couldn't tell. Cricket is a sport that I wish was played more in America. It's a great sport. And if you watch cricket, you're probably going to be like, what the heck are they doing? They hit the ball backwards. It makes a lot of sense once you learn the rules, similar to baseball, but it's really fun, and I would love to see more of it. And when people, start watching it and they play, they're actually like, oh, this is actually a great sport, and it's very strategic. So I would love to see that. Probably never going to happen, but that's a sport I would pick to see at Wisconsin, or really just more so present in our country.
I appreciate that, Rajeev. I will say it is solidly in line behind baseball. So I don't just try to put too much money on that one in Vegas. Guys, I want to say, we can go forever here, but thank you so much for the time. And Justin, he's on the shit list now. You don't want to be on the Dawn shit list, but we'll figure out what happened. Maybe he lost himself in a bottle of brandy or something, but he's not. I'm a little surprised by that. I'm not hurt, but I'm surprised. So
enough.
that's okay.
I really bet you he fell asleep. I'm telling you, I bet that's what it is.
That's supposed to happen after when you're watching it, not when you're on it.
No, it was awesome to come on, man. And for everybody listening that follows the Locked On Badgers show, if you follow that show, please subscribe to Scary's show too. I will say this, like he's one of the real ones. So he's like I said, he reached out and helped me when he had no business coming on my show. So give him a sub. Let's bump those numbers up. More great content's coming for sure.
And if you don't
appreciate that, Ryan.
If you don't follow Scary on Twitter, which I'm sure all of you do, especially if you're just listening from Locked On, it's definitely one of the best Badger Twitters out there. Just fantastic stuff. So I've been following you for a while, and I think it's great.
I appreciate that. And if you're one of the people who've like said something that pisses me off, I tell you to fuck off or something, I probably only like 75% meant it. So don't block me. Just come back on. We'll talk. We'll find something in common we like Gary Anderson coaching flag football now or something. It's something that we're all gonna like. It's gonna be all right. No, he actually left the team though. He was coaching a seventh grade flag football team, but couldn't quite stick it out. He left them to coach to coach fourth grade soccer over in somewhere in Corvallis. So, all right, guys. Well, have a great. I'm not going to play any music right now. I'm just going to end the recording. But thanks for coming on, and I will let you know when this goes on in 6 weeks. Just kidding. It's going to be sooner.
Love it.
Probably by the weekend. All right, man. Have a good one.
Thank you.